Donc je vous présente Neil Maiden et George Brock qui nous viennent de CTU à Londres et qui vont présenter un nouvel outil très créatif qui va nous permettre à nous, futurs journalistes ou journalistes déjà en exercice, d'exercer et d'écrire autrement.
Merci Alice. Bonjour messieurs, dames. Je suis George Brock, ici Neil Maiden. Et nous voulons aujourd'hui vous montrer un nouveau pratique de journalisme, c'est-à-dire un outil qui permettra les journalistes de travailler mieux et plus vite, c'est-à-dire application des techniques de créativité à journalisme et en particulier à la recherche en ligne. Excuse me if I switch to English, because the slide is in English. I would not need to tell this audience in great detail about the difficulties of journalism, declining circulation, declining advertising revenue, rising costs, staff reductions, and the insecurity of work and jobs. That is all a well-established story. We think that the application of creativity support tools developed by Neil and his team for other areas, such as healthcare, can have an application in journalism, and we would like to very briefly explain to you how that works. Because we think it will not only make journalists probably more productive who are able to use it and who wish to use it, but really more importantly, it actually adds value to journalists and to those who consume their work. You have to find content that is new and fresh and attractive and engaging, and we think that there are interesting ways to use creativity software to improve that. In order to develop this tool that we have called Juice, we needed to do a little bit of classification of what it is that journalists actually do, or more precisely, what they want when they are trying to think sideways or think laterally when researching a story. And after being interrogated in some depth and detail by Neil and his team, I came up with 6 areas called codified creative strategies here in the slide, which I thought were 6 of the commonest ways in which people try to think laterally or sideways or creatively, or would assist them in doing so. One of those was individual perspectives, biography, profiles, details about individuals. The second we have called quantifiable elements, measurable evidence which underpins serious stories. Then we looked for background explanation, particularly causal explanation in the third one. The fourth one we've called here ramifications, so we are talking about the later future consequences of stories and of what is happening. We tried to bear in mind that journalists must engage their users and readers, so we thought that there needed to be an element of amusement and fun and quirky things. And lastly, we thought that it was important to have a database of or use data visualizations. At that point, I hand over to my colleague, Neil.
Merci, mon ami.
And I move sideways.
C'est rare que vous avez 2 Anglais qui parlent français devant vous, mais on va continuer en anglais. Je suis désolé. C'est le prix d'avoir se levé à 5 heures ce matin. Je suis fatigué. Okay, so we thought the best thing to do is to show you a live demo. So this is the tool called Juice. Well, this is not it. This is indeed a Google Docs screen. But what we've done is build the current version of Google Docs as an embedded add-on to Google Docs. So in order to start it, you simply choose the app start, and it will appear as a almost discrete sidebar in the Google Docs document that you might be working on. So it's intended to be as unintrusive as possible, to be not yet another application that you have to fill your desktop with. So there's a lot of talk about Brexit. I am a Brexit refugee at this moment, and therefore I am now particularly worried about jumping out of the frying pan into the fire with this one. So I thought I'd be interested in this story. So what happens if Renzi loses the referendum next week? Well, the simple thing I can do in the tool here is to explore these creative strategies is simply import this piece of text into the tool. And you can see we've done some parsing, some making sense. We can actually do this across languages. So I could translate this from English to French automatically with Google Translation Services, but that's too much for a 5-minute demo. Maybe I'll just broaden my search. You'll then see there are these 6 icons that map onto the 6 strategies that we have from Georges Braque dans une boîte. That's probably the best way to think about this. That doesn't translate, obviously, as funnily as it did in English. Never mind.
I was turned into a robot.
It was funnier last week. Okay, so if I'm interested in perhaps exploring individual angles on this story, I'll just let the tool run. Now, what it's doing at this point is exploiting RSS feeds associated with almost 500 news websites. And what it's doing is searching for those news articles and then extracting interesting human angles on the story. So here's the first person you might want to consider building a human angle around, Mario Draghi. I should stress, because this is a creativity support tool, I don't know what's going to happen next. It's not like Googling, okay? So I don't know what could be here. And then I can see which stories that Mario Draghi, the Italian former Prime Minister, or I think he was former Prime Minister, was in. We can go through. There's someone called Renato Brunetta from Venice, who's an Italian economist. We can go down. There's Barack Obama, who may have an angle on this. Hillary Clinton, maybe. The dreaded, I won't even use the language there. Oops, what's happened there? Geert Wilders, and so on. Renzi himself. And we can scroll through and see other people that are clues to people we might not have thought of that will give us an angle to create a story. If we don't know any of these people, let me see if there's one, Marco Panella, we can just click, and we are then able to pull down information about this person from Wikipedia to give you quick access about that person. If you don't want to explore that strategy, we can explore other ones. So let's look for news stories that pull backing and evidence related to possibly the loss of the Italian referendum next week. This is pulling up news stories with different angles. Behind this, the tool is doing very sophisticated natural language processing and advanced exploratory search based on creativity search algorithms that we've developed in other fields. So we see a story about what Lithuania is saying about the UK's decision to leave. Brexit, see EU leaders hold emergency talks. It's interesting that they're linking the Italian referendum through to Brexit here through the stories. That is what the tool is doing, not me asking for anything about Brexit. We can see here, first Brexit, then Trump, is Italy next for the West populist wave in The Guardian just one day ago. Since we have Guardian people here, I will click on that story, and you will then be able to see the story first of all within the tool, so you don't have to leave it. There's a griot, another human angle you might want to take on the story. For example, if we then wanted to copy parts of that text into the article just to sort of mark it for later on, you can see it appears. And if I wanted to insert the reference, that will also appear there. So there's quick-to-use tools to enable you to rapidly build up the pieces of your argument. Now, I'm conscious that time is short here. Please, George.
May I just say here that the speed to which Neil has just referred is very, very important, because when you are researching a piece, you will have certain ideas about what's going to strike a spark, but you will want to go through a lot quickly. You're looking in a way for a needle in a haystack often. And this is displayed and organized in a way that you can skim through it very, very fast. There's lots of stuff that won't be right, because that's the way creativity support tools tend to work.
That's true. So you don't get things in the normal order, you get them in Google. It's deliberately provoking with different orders. So in principle, if I was to click this link again, we should get the different articles in different orders. So it's giving you enough creative inspiration to get that angle. Oh, didn't give them in a different order, but never mind. I shall talk to the team about that. This is very much still a research prototype. Now, the last two strategies haven't been implemented. We'll be implementing those early next year, and I'll explain how that's been funded. But one that's worth looking at here is Quirky. So George basically gave us the challenge of designing a tool which is funny. And even as British people, we found that a bit of a challenge. But what we have done is link the tool to a database of tens of thousands of political cartoons from the cartoon movement in the Netherlands. And so we will take the contents of that search and pull out thumbnails of, I don't know what, there we go, it's just a bit slow. So you can see, let's click on this cartoon here. What does this tell us about referendum? Yes, 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 okay. I think there's a nice theme there you might be able to take ideas from. Let's go down, a vote in the Italian Parliament. Okay, I'm not fully enough with the Italian humour on that angle. But you can browse these to get random ideas, and we could change the quotes at any time. I can change the queries. So I've given you a flavour of the tool, and we've designed it primarily at the moment as a plugin to Google Docs, which is searching these news sources. The tool will be from early next year also using 4 different social media streams, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and one other that I can't think of while I sit here. And we will be also using other types of content, such as video. So, for example, using satirical channels on YouTube to populate or source creative ideas related to Quirky. So just to try and keep the time a little bit this afternoon, since I do have a train to catch later, let me just go through a few of these slides here. That was just in case the Wi-Fi didn't work. The follow-on. So up until now, this work has been funded by Google in its digital news initiative, and that work finishes at the end of December. In a rare moment of clarity and luck, the follow-on funding starts on the 1st of January. It's an EU-funded project. Yes, us British are still allowed to be involved. Thank you, George. It's called INJECT, which stands for Innovative Journalism Enhanced Creativity Tools, which is a damned good acronym, one of the best I've come up with. Will involve 14 partners across 6 countries, and it will involve this juice and other tools into something far more sophisticated, multi-channel for use in different CMSs, newsrooms, more distributed journalist networks. Now, the good news is that both Sciences Po and City are partners, and so we are, at this point, really just announcing this project. And if you even like a little bit of what you've seen, email us, talk to us. We are looking to get the tool out there into as many places as possible, and it will be multi-language. So we will be running it in Holland, in Norway, in France, and it will be running across languages within Europe, exploiting automated Google Translation services. George, would you like to add any more? Because you're the journalist person and I'm just the nerd.
I wanted to add about adaptability. Neil mentioned that in the next phase of the project, we will be searching social media sites and so on. For example, quite an early stage of this project, we took it to Norway, where we were talking to local journalists, and we were working off a standard news database. And they said, well, that's all fine, but actually we're not terribly interested in that kind of thing. We are only interested if you can search Facebook. So in future iterations of this tool, you will be able to control what you're searching. If you know, you can search everything, or you can divide it up, and it will be standard databases and social information as well. So it will be more adaptable in that sense. And also, although Neil went over this rather fast, you can take the search terms and manipulate them as well. If you do want to narrow it down and you think that this tool will work that way, you can take terms out, or indeed you can add other ones in. It will give you something automatically from a passage you have written, but you can adjust that process as well. So our purpose is to make it with as many adjustable bits that you can use if you want to, but it will work in a simple, standard, default way if that isn't the case. Please do come and talk to us if you're interested in any aspect of this or curious about it or would like us to test it out in your newsroom if you happen to be in a newsroom.
Do we have time for questions?
Do we have time for questions? We do. I'm going to ask myself a question because I got asked this question quite a lot when we did this presentation at a Hacks and Hackers meeting in London less than a week ago. And a number of people said, are you aiming to replace journalists? The emphatic answer is that this is something to assist human journalists. There is absolutely no intention or indeed any possibility that this in this form could replace virtually any human work that we know as journalism. It might speed up what journalists do, but that is a completely different matter. Aha.
Hello, I'm a journalist working for Le Monde in Paris. I was wondering, can you guarantee that you will not encourage journalists to investigate false news? I mean, how can you make the difference between what is really strong news and what is not very trustful news?
So what we're envisaging is multiple versions of this tool owned by different local ecosystems, news organizations, and so on. And so you can control where it searches. You have complete control. We will configure it for you. This is not a shrink wrap, out-of-the-box tool. So if we work, was it Le Monde you said you were at? Yeah. We would build a configured version that maybe searches your own news repositories based in your own CMS, targeted news things. At the moment, we're searching these 470 news sites because they're available to us and quick to prototype with. But like George says, local Norwegian newspapers will want completely different sources of news to say Le Monde or The Guardian. So it's controllable.
I also predict that we're going to very rapidly reach a situation in which news articles that are for some reason discovered to be not reliable, and that begs a lot of questions, but just doing it briefly, are going to get flagged and tagged in databases that are serious and wish to be seen as reliable. So I think that's a controllable problem. If you find you're getting something dodgy from something that was coming through this, all you've got to do is remove that source. It has to be modular and adaptable in that way, partly because of risks of that kind.
And is it possible to test this extension already? Sorry, yeah.
Yes, come and see us.
Where did that come from? I didn't see the person.
I couldn't see the questioner either.
Oh, there you are. We'll come and find you.
We'll come and find you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.